What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Early Wedge. My name is Nejad, and I'm joined today by Mike McClure. Rick will be with us later in the week. He is traveling and certainly will be with us next Monday as well. Mike, I'm still licking my wounds from having that Fleetwood in the without market and hedging with Spawn and not having Rose. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Definitely not. You're probably not feeling as good after that. That was a brutal situation there. It's a good reminder of how hard it is to win golf tournaments, whether it be, on the course for those guys actually playing or us here, trying to hit outrights, trying to win DFS contests, whatever it may be. It's a very, very difficult thing to pull off. And I definitely feel for you. I feel for Tommy Fleetwood because it's only adding to the narrative that the guy can't win.
We got a lot of people in the chat already. And by the way, the Early Wedge team, I didn't really check on anybody else, but I will say I did win all three of my round matchups. So it wasn't like a terrible week. I hit my tournament matchup, hit 1 out of 2 top 10 or finishing positions, which one of them was Tommy Fleetwood, top 10 at plus 175. So it's not like it was a bad week, Mike. It's just, I've had a good outright year, but I've been on the doorstep like the last 4 or 5 weeks. Like a good outright year could be like an absolutely great outright year if a couple of things fall my way, but that's just the nature of betting golf outrights. I see Brad Morris in the chat, Mike Miller, who says, I smell a Chris Goddard win parlayed with a Shohei Ohtani home run tonight. We love Mike Miller for his parlays. Mike, let's talk about the Chris Goddard side of Mike Miller's parlay here. We are going to the BMW Championship, which is at Caves Valley in Maryland. I think I'm going to be there on Friday, everybody. So maybe I can give you some special insight in the middle of the tournament. But it's interesting because, Mike, when we look at the scorecard now, if you're watching us on YouTube, we've already got that put up thanks to Josh. And you look at the scorecard, what was it, in 2021 when Patrick Cantlay beat Bryson DeChambeau in a playoff. It's a little different, right? Because we have a par 70 now, 7,600 yards, pretty long course, as opposed to a par 72 last time. There have been some other renovations, but to me, Mike, this feels like a course where it's, bombers, off the tee monsters. Like that's where I'm headed first.
Yeah, definitely bombers. Got to be able to make birdies as well. But yeah, definitely leaning distance. We don't have a ton of data on the course, but one thing I'm very confident in is distance is definitely going to be your friend. So it's certainly going to be where I'm looking, right away. I think that at this point too, we'll talk about it as we get throughout the show, but I'm wondering how after distance, like, are there a ton of other metrics that we're weighting super heavily, or are we just kind of looking at recent form a little more? I know I'm looking at recent form a little more, knowing that we're getting 4 rounds and there's a very limited number of golfers in the field as well. So I don't have a ton of things weighted heavily other than essentially driving distance and birdies in recent form.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. And I think recent form is sort of the great answer in terms of what we might be looking for. I'll tell you the metrics that I've looked at so far, and they're not going to surprise anybody. I started with off the tee. I went to driving distance. I went to putting. I went to ball striking. And I run these in sort of different, just like you, Mike, with your model. Like I might be looking at like 50 rounds for distance or 36, and I might be looking at recent form with the ball striking down to the 16 to 20 round range. So I'm kind of like messing with the numbers a little bit, but certainly recent form is going to be there. And I want people who have a certain amount of distance. They don't all need to be bombers. But the shorter players certainly, ties will not go to them. Outside of that, Mike, I took a peek at accuracy, but again, I think this is a distance fest. And one of the stats that you like a lot, because I don't know how thick this rough is going to be, the fairway rough. And I have heard rumors that it's going to be a little bit thicker than 2021. I don't think it's going to be tricky by any means, but ball speed and driving distance and off the tee, they tend to be correlated. So I feel like looking at ball speed, this might be a decent week for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's, club head speed is definitely what I look at a lot.
That's what I meant. Club head speed.
Yeah, it's almost identical 1-to-1 with driving distance, but certainly fine to lean into just using that club head speed. Definitely would be using that as a tiebreaker this week if you're deciding, between a golfer or 2 or 3. I would certainly lean to the golfers if there is a measurable difference in terms of club head speed from one to the other. That would definitely be a deciding factor for me.
And Mike, remind everybody, we had a no cut event last week. It was 70. I don't think we're treating this no cut event really any different than, like, in other words, 50 versus 70. I don't think is going to be a huge difference, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. But just from a DFS standpoint, how should we be treating these no cut events that are 50 people deep?
So the biggest change is the number of feasible lineups reduces drastically, and will again when we get to 30. I mean, it's, the value in terms of, hey, Chiefy, how you doing, buddy? The value of getting to a unique lineup is huge here. Like, it's more difficult and going to become more difficult every step of the way here. But I think it's still valuable and something you should be concerning yourself with, I think, quite a bit, because I think that there's going to be a few very popular builds. And I think there's a lot of value in getting different when you're not having to get different and beat 100 other golfers with that golfer you're getting different with. For me, I think there's just a ton of value in the overall ownership number of your lineup as a whole this week.
Very interesting. We're going to get into roster. We're going to get into all these players, of course. And by the way, it's 49, I guess, with Sepp Straka withdrawing. But we're going to get into roster construction. We're going to get into kind of different ways to formulate your lineup. Maybe some popular builds that, Mike, you and I like, just to start off with, like some cornerstone plays. And we have to always ask the question, how popular is that going to be? And if it is popular, well, where do we maybe get different in some of these price ranges? We're going to cover all of that right after this message from our partners.
Here we go. The 2025 CBS Sports NFL schedule is here. 18 glorious Sundays.
He's got his receiver, touchdown!
Filled with rematches.
Oh, the play of the year!
And rivalries.
Touchdown, Bengals!
Plus, plenty of superstar showdowns. And an epic matchup between the Chiefs and Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Clear your Sundays beginning September 7th for the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
We are back on the Early Wedge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Let's put up the numbers. Let's put up the pricing courtesy of Rick Run Good. This is the pricing over at DraftKings. Mike, we start with an expensive Scottie Scheffler, or maybe a discounted Scottie Scheffler. First of all, before you answer that question, there's a lot of people in this range. We got Patrick Cantlay at 10,100, Ludwig Oberg, 10,200, Tommy Fleetwood, 10,400, Xander Schauffele, 10,500, and Rory McIlroy, 11,400. And then finally, Scottie at the top at 13,400. Your thoughts on just strictly the pricing of Scottie Scheffler this week?
I think
Justin
that
Thomas as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it could be higher, right? I think that, it gets a discount. Yes, you're putting Rory back in, and they have made the 10K range a lot bigger. Still, I think that Scottie could be over 14. Like, there's no issue getting Scottie in a lineup this week at 13-4, like none. I could play Scottie and Rory together and still like the lineup personally, which I think is interesting. Honestly, at this point, I would kind of like it if I couldn't mathematically even get Scottie and Rory together. I think that would be cool, but you can. And, because of that, I think that he's not expensive enough. I would have set Scottie up over 14.5 probably. He's been the best golfer, and I really don't think it's close. I don't care if he's not winning every event. Like, if you pull up his game log anywhere, but on DraftKings, where I went to go put a lineup in, like, you have to scroll to find some time where you don't see a single digit finishing position. And when you do, it's 20th. And if you look for one where he was worse than 25, you've got to find a different calendar year, right? So it's just truly incredible. He's deserving of the price point. He's too cheap, and he will definitely be very popular. Probably the most popular golfer on the slate for good reason. I will be playing him.
Is there a scenario where, you know what, maybe we'll talk about this later. I just wanted to know if there's a scenario where, because I know you play a limited number of lineups, where maybe you play, because you're only playing 3. I might play like 10 or 15. There's going to be lineups where I fade Scottie and Rory and Xander, and I try to get different that way. Maybe start a build with Ludwig. We can get to that discussion later, but I do want to point out, for the record, Scottie and Rory, it is a bit expensive. I mean, you're only left with 6,300 left, but yes, it's technically true. You can build a lineup. Let me point out some other ones though, Mike. Scottie and Ludwig leaves you with 6,600. Again, don't forget, this is a no-cut event. Scottie and Cam Young leaves you 6,700. So the difference between Ludwig and a Scottie lineup and a Cam Young lineup, not really there. There's not much of a difference there. But Scottie and a guy who I think might be pretty popular, who we'll get to in the 8K range, Chris Gotterup, that leaves you 7,025. Now, if you want to ditch the Scottie lineups and you want to get different because you want to start with Ludwig, I'll just point out that Ludwig, Cam Young, and Hovland will leave you about 7,000 as well. Technically 6,933. So you can try to get different, a little tricky here. But Mike, I guess the advice here, at least coming from you, is you might want to play Scottie.
Yeah, I think you want to play Scottie. And look, I'm gonna play 2 out of 3 with Scottie almost definitely, right? So I'm playing 3 lineups. I'm confident that I'm in theory overweight to the field at that point. Like, I don't think Scottie's going to be 70% owned yet.
Right.
He will be for the final tournament, but I think it's, 50 to 60% range. I'm getting 67%. So that's kind of where I'm going to play it. But yeah, I think that if you're playing one lineup, it probably should be a Scottie lineup. If you're playing, I would be equal to the field at minimum. I would not get cute trying to be underweight on Scottie this week.
So who is the silver and bronze medalist in terms of who you might play as well in this 10K range, which again, I did misspeak at the outset. Justin Thomas also in this range. This is a range that's 7 deep.
Yeah, it's a huge range, right? As far as next most likely to play for me, it would be Ludwig. I've liked Ludwig a lot. Frankly, I've kind of liked the results I've seen. I think that he could have been, a little bit better, say at the Open Championship, finished 223, that opening round 73 and a final round 70, around 2 really good lineups. But I've loved what I've seen from him here. As you look at the profile, a ton of green here. We just talked about how off the tee is going to be incredibly important. He's got the distance. He's got the skill set. I think Ludwig is the guy here. So he's number 2 in for me. Number 3, Rory. Number 4, Xander. Number 5, JT. I will not play Cantlay, and I will not play Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, I'm not going to play most of the people in this range. I don't have an argument against Rory. I think his price is very fair. I don't know that I'm actually going to get to Rory. For me, it's probably Scottie and Ludwig, and then I'm going to move on. I'm not going back to Tommy Fleetwood. I did play him last week. I'm not going to go to Xander because I just don't think he's there yet. And I don't think his ownership is going to be depressed enough for us to be like, oh, we're getting a lot of ownership leverage on Xander Schauffele. We'll have to wait and see. We'll do the live chat on Wednesday and talk about some updated numbers. But even JT, Mike, this doesn't really feel like a great course fit for JT. So I just can't imagine his ownership number being low enough for me to say, oh, okay, now I'm getting the leverage I need. I'm going to play Justin Thomas.
Yeah, the thing I would caution on some of that is like, you're not going to see the low ownership numbers that we're used to because the field is a third the size of what it actually is at a normal event, right? 49 golfers here. We're usually talking about 150 golfers in a field, right? 145 to 156, somewhere in that range. So there is significantly less. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. Combinations even, and viable combinations, particularly when you throw in salary cap and talk about, Scottie, things like that. The number of lineups, while it's still huge, that you're going to run into a lot of dupes. You're going to run into, golfers at, 10 to 13, 14% are essentially single digit owned golfers on a normal week.
Yeah, that's a very good point. All right, let's transition from this 10K range to the 9K range, because I think this is where there's going to be some interesting ownership. And I don't necessarily know where it's going to land, but it starts with Cameron Young. Then we go to Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa, JJ Spawn, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland, Ben Griffin, and Sepp Straka, who is now withdrawn. So he is not in this tournament. But Mike, I do feel like some of these guys are going to be popular. I don't know how many are going to go back to JJ Spawn specifically, but Russell Henley is always just going to be somewhat popular. Cameron Young makes a ton of sense at 9,800, although I think a lot of people will think, well, that's a little pricey for Cameron Young. Victor Hovland, people will not hesitate to go back to him. Probably a better course fit this week. Ben Griffin, people won't hesitate to go to him. I think Sam Burns and Colin Morikawa and maybe JJ Spawn are the three that maybe don't receive as much popularity as the others.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this 9K range is very interesting because I would also agree with the sentiment that people might say 9.8 is too much for Cam Young.
Yeah.
I would disagree with the way he's played. That I think that all the risks are factored in, right? And those risks are the field is cut down to 49 players. He's guaranteed to play all 4 rounds. We've seen the upside time and time again here. So I like Cam Young a little bit here. I think he profiles very well. Morikawa is the very interesting one for me. I think that we've all, been very down on him. The sentiment has been extremely low. But when you look in terms of like events that he's just truly been awful at, like, yes, he's not winning events and not finishing top 5 necessarily, which is what we expect. But can I give him a pass for going across the world and missing 2 cuts there? I think I probably can. When I know that he's guaranteed to play all 4 rounds and there's only 48 other golfers in the field. Like Colin Morikawa finding that upside that he has in this event is like, yeah, well within the range of outcomes. So I like Colin. If the ownership number that we get on Wednesday dictates that he's going to be really low in this group, and I'm actually kind of going to group 9K up to 10-2 at Ludwig. That's kind of, I know that we talk about groupings. Like I would kind of cut those groupings off and make it like 10-2 down to 9K. That's the range I would look at. That range right there is going to be very, very interesting to see where the field is. I'm also interested to see where the field comes in on a guy like JJ Spawn, who just doesn't have the name value as some of these other guys. But again, awesome. Just been incredible. Kind of like Cam Young. Like, do you want to pay 9,400 for JJ Spawn in this loaded field? I actually kind of do.
Talk to me about Ben Griffin and Victor Hovland. Are those guys that you think you might lean on? And is there one that you like better than the other?
I'll like Griffin and Hovland's. I've got them very close to each other, like right next to each other. For me, it would come down to the ownership number most likely. I will say I do think it's a pretty good fit for Hovland, even though he burned a lot of people last week. I think that,
yeah. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I actually agree with you. I'm a little tentative on Hovland, but I don't mind playing him. The one guy that I think will, like, we know a couple of guys will probably get like kind of squeezed a little bit. I do think Colin, JJ Spawn, another guy that's in that range that I don't think people aren't high enough on Sam Burns to play him in that, 9,300 range. Is that a guy you would go to as a potential ownership leverage play?
He's definitely within the range there. I think he's definitely within the range. Certainly not my favorite. Certainly not what I'm jumping to right away. I personally will play JJ Spawn before Sam Burns, $100 more. I'd play Cam Young at 98 before I would get to him, but I wouldn't, if I like the rest of the lineup that the computer gave me, I personally would not remove Sam Burns.
Is it fair to say that Cam Young's your favorite player in this 9K range?
Yeah, just slightly over JJ Spawn. I do like JJ Spawn though. Again, I think that one thing that's incredibly valuable for people as DFS players is to be able to not get tied up in like name value and all of that too much and really accurately assess how someone is playing golf right now. I think JJ Spawn, I think the price point is deserved, but I just don't think the field is going to play him when there's some of those other big names right around him.
Yeah, certainly not the longest guy in the world, but the long iron play certainly makes up for that. And this guy's a good putter too. So Spawn definitely checks a lot of boxes. And again, I think he's in a range, that's that mid 9K range that might not get looked at quite as much as the upper 9 and lower 9K range. So something to consider there. Let's go to the 8K range. It starts with Matt Fitzpatrick. We go down to Decky. We go down to Keegan Bradley. And then we've got our winner from last week, Justin Rose, Chris Gotterup, likely to be pretty popular, Corey Connors, Harris English, Akshay, Bobby Mack, and Sung J M. Mike, it's hard for me to look away from Chris Gotterup here.
Yeah, I think that he's, to me, the obvious misprice. Kind of the argument I wanted to make essentially coming in, he's, recent form, right? Like, we don't have a ton of data here. The data that we do have suggests that we want you to be good off the tee. We want you to have some driving distance in general, combined with that, just gaining strokes off the tee.
Mm-hmm.
And I want guys that are playing really good golf right now. And he certainly fits that bill. I mean, looking at driving distance over the last 24 rounds, he's actually second in this field to Rory McIlroy.
Yeah.
Off the tee, he is number 1 currently in strokes gained off the tee. Total strokes gained 4th. Like,
anything you look at,
not $9,500.
That's the thing. Anything you look at, the ball striking, the putting, he's just, the only thing you could criticize him for is he's not always the most accurate off the tee. But again, we don't know how much that's going to matter, how penal the rough's going to be. But again, club head speed, things of that nature, I still think he's going to be okay if he's inaccurate. That's why I had him. That's why I have him as my early edge pick this morning, Mike, in the without Scottie Rory market at 30-1. Any thoughts on that as an outright?
No, I like it. I was a little kind of lukewarm this morning when we talked about it after diving through everything there. I'm much warmer on the idea of Gotterup in a without market. Still going to be my preference to play him in DFS. To me, this sounds a little absurd to say, but he's very similar to Scottie in that I feel very confident that I need to be overweight the field after price points, right? So when I run my lineups right now, the computer gives me nearly 100% Scottie and 100% Gotterup. If I remove Scottie, it's still 100% Gotterup.
Not a surprise at all. And again, I went over it at the beginning. The Scottie Gotterup combo leaves you over 7,000, exactly 7,025, which is a ton. It's a ton to play with. Anybody else in this 8K range? I mean, we just covered Chris Gotterup, but there's certainly other names here. Anything jumping out to you?
8K. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly Gotterup right down into the 7s. Look, Matt Fitzpatrick is still playing good golf. He's 8,900. I think people are going to jump back off of him a little bit here in this particular spot. So I could be talked in to Fitzpatrick there. Otherwise, I'm mostly dipping into the 7s and lower, but a lot of that is because I'm playing Scottie Scheffler.
You'd agree with me that this range is going to be outside of Chris Gotterup and maybe a little Fitz, because I agree with both of those takes. But particularly Chris Gotterup, I feel like a lot of people are going to jump into the 8K range, grab Chris Gotterup, grab one or two guys up top, depending on whether they're playing Scottie, go into the low 6K range, grab a guy. Like, I just feel like the 8K range is not going to be visited that much. And that's not me saying, oh, I'm going to play all the guys in the 8K range. You get really tricky, because I don't like a lot of these guys. But if you were to build a lineup with somehow 2 or 3 8K guys, you would be vastly different than the field.
I think you would be pretty different. Yes. Especially if you played Fitzpatrick as one of those, or like Decky or someone in those range. Yeah, it would be pretty different. It's a very small 8K range this week.
Yeah. All right. We got to get to the 7K range. A lot of people pointing out guys in the 7K range and the 6K range that we're definitely going to cover. So thanks for all the comments. Hopefully you all have hit the like button. We always appreciate that, but thanks for being in here regardless. Ladies and gentlemen, we hit that 7K range. We hit the 6K range right after this message from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
We are back on the Early Wedge. I'm joined by Mike McClure. Mike, let's get to this 7K range. This is so interesting because in a 49-person field, we normally see a 7K range where, well, we can't say all the names because there's too many, but here we are with, 49 players. So this 7K range, I might as well go through the names here. We start with a guy that I think is going to be very popular for very good reason. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to announce that Rickie Fowler is back. Harry Hall, a guy you love at 7,800. So it's Rickie, Harry Hall. Then we go to Shane Lowry, very middling form. Kurt Kitayama, another guy that people are going to like at 7,600, certainly going to rate out well. Mav McNeely, very sneaky, distance off the tee, a good ball striker. I think, listen, this so far so good on this range. Then we get to Jason Day, Siwoo Kim, Taylor Pendrith. I think the last two names I just said are very sneaky. Denny McCarthy, Andrew Novak. There's a lot to digest here, Mike. And I got to tell you, I don't know that I'm going to get on Kitayama personally, but Rickie Fowler, yes, I may not be on Hall, even though I think he's a good play. Pendrith and Rickie are the ones that stick out to me right now. Who sticks out to you?
Yeah, Rickie definitely sticks out. We've been tracking him a little bit over the last few weeks. Love the results that I'm seeing. I'm probably going to be on Kurt Kitayama a little bit. The computer definitely wants me to be. I'm trying to fight it a little bit, but everything kind of checks out, to be honest with you. So I like Rickie. I'll probably work him in. Depends on where his ownership comes in. I think he might be someone that I think a lot of people ultimately talk themselves into. So I'm going to wait and see where my projected number comes in on that. But the way I'm building, because again, I'm playing Scottie and got her up, or I'm going to play like Ludwig Rory got her up, or something crazy like that. Essentially, I'm going to be playing guys in this range and lower. The two that I'm getting the most of, which again, I think will be pretty popular, Kitayama and McNeely, the two that I'm definitely going to be having a little exposure to.
So it's interesting. I'm trying to build lineups here that have a couple 7K guys and Chris Goddard. So I just built Scottie, Kitty, and this is just 4 out of 6 here. Scottie at the top. Then I went to Chris Goddard, that build we talked about that leaves me 7,025. Then I went to Rickie Fowler and Kurt Kitayama. That leaves me 6,300, which means I got to take a really low 6K guy and maybe a mid 6K guy. But if I were, just hypothetically speaking, to fade Chris Goddard because his ownership's too high and whatever, because I make that decision, I go back down to that 7K range and I throw in McNeely. Now, maybe I've stolen some of the win equity out of this lineup, but Rickie, Kurt Kitayama, Mav McNeely, Scottie Scheffler leaves me 6,800, which allows me to, do a few things here. Am I sacrificing too much win equity there? Or like, where would the question for you, Mike, is would you pivot? And if you did, would it be off Scottie or would it be off one of those, two of those 3 guys in the 7K range?
So I think personally, this is a week to really lock in on the guys that you really like. And if you need to get different elsewhere, because there's not a lot of difference in scoring from someone that's going to finish 24th in this tournament and 35th. Right. So always important to look at scoring rules and understand scoring rules. So they score points obviously, and they'll be ahead because of that. But when we're talking about tournament finishing positions, right? If you finish, say, what did I say? 24th in this tournament, or 21st even, for 21st place finish, you get 4 points in DFS scoring. If I finish 39th, I get 2. That's less than a birdie, separating someone finishing 20 positions apart. For me, I would be more concerned with just getting some unique lineup together that gives yourself some of that upside to win. But really the most important part is win equity, and getting your guys in the top 6 to 7 of this field is going to be what separates everything in terms of DFS. I mean, you're going to have 3 or 4 of your guys in the top 6 of this leaderboard.
That's right. Anybody in the 7K range that might be not super popular that you'd be willing to play? Like, I'm looking at guys like Jason Day, Denny McCarthy, Andrew Novak, Shane Lowry. I think those are the guys that people aren't super, maybe even Harry Hall. I don't know exactly where the crowd is going to go with him, but your thoughts on some of those maybe guys that like allow you to get a little different?
Yeah. So I would consider Shane Lowry, even though the form's been awful. Doesn't have really the distance to speak of, but still good on approach. So, if you're not going to have elite distance, you need to be very good on approach. I think it's something that I would also caution with to people this week. Other 7K guys, I like Novak a lot. Still, I think he's better than where he's been priced.
Mhm.
Yeah, Novak. I mean, look, the argument that I'm trying to make on all of it is like most of the time here, there's not someone that doesn't belong in a lineup at this point.
Yeah.
You look at like again, there are only 49 golfers. Like when you talk about finishing position argument, if you're talking about there are so many guys that are playable, and I wouldn't go change a lineup because you don't like one of those guys. That as long as you've got the other guys that give you all the top end upside, that's what I'd be focused on.
Yeah, I'll say this. I definitely will have at least one of my lineups that will start with Scottie, Goddard, and Rickie Fowler. That still leaves me 67-33, and I can kind of decide where to go from there with my last three positions. Anybody else in the 7K range, or do we jump to the 6K range, Mike?
I think we jump to the 6K range. My numbers, again, I'll try and update a little on Wednesday, but as of right now, until I get real decent ownership projection, for me, it's going to be Kitayama and McNeely, the first ones in the sevens for me.
And you agree Rickie is on the positive side of things for you as well?
Definitely on the positive side. I'm fascinated to see where the projected ownership comes in between Kitayama, McNeely, and Rickie. If Rickie's somehow lower than them, then I'll definitely be playing Rickie.
I think it goes Rickie, Kitayama, and then Mav. In terms of like just ordering those three, not necessarily the top three. But I mean, we saw, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you, or on Twitter, you saw Josh put up the Rick Run Good stuff on Kitayama. I mean, his recent form is so compelling. You look at the finishing positions, and then you look at the strokes gain metrics, and it's eye popping. And Mike, for the record, the reason I said I might not get to him was because I did think he was going to be a popular play. But again, sure, if you really like him, you get different elsewhere. I completely understand that argument as well. And I might be wrong about the ownership. We'll find out on Wednesday at 4:00 when you join us here on YouTube. 6K range. Maybe I won't say all these names. It starts with Brian Harmon at 6,900. We go to Daniel Berger, JT Poston, Nick Taylor, Sam Stevens. It's interesting. Jacob Bridgman, a guy I was on last week, who pretty much paid off. Lucas Glover, Bud Cauley popped last week. Your guy, Ryan Gerard. Maybe kind of my guy, at least at the beginning of the season, Ryan Fox. Then we go to Dietrich, Johnny Vegas, who somebody in the chat was asking about, yep, Tom Hoagie, Brian Campbell, and Michael Kim at a flat 6K. Very interesting there with him and Brian Campbell. Mike, who do you like here?
So there's going to be golfers that end up popular in this region, and I have no problem sort of pivoting if you need to, but Gerard for me is going to be probably one of the first ones in, and then Johnny Vegas. Vegas at 61, like I think he could be 68 to 69 in this field.
Yeah.
So he's got the distance. A lot of people may not think about it like that, but he's got the distance, and we've seen him flash the upside for individual rounds at a time without, some unregulated, like it's been regular, right? He's regularly flashed upside for a round at a time. Again, 4 rounds. So I'm going to play Gerard. I'm going to play a little bit of Vegas. JT Poston is coming up a little bit for me. Don't love this, the distance stuff here, but I think on overall skill set, I don't think he's the worst play.
So the note on Vegas here is, he might not find it with the putter, right? He's typically going to lose with the putter, and it comes down to, well, how much does he lose with the putter? What I love about Vegas, though, is that he's a scorer and the ball striking. Look at what he's done just with the ball striking over the last, let's see, 6 tournaments. He's gained 6.28, 1.02, 4.67, 3.81, lost 0.23, and gained 6.02. And a few tournaments before that, he gained 6.5 strokes ball striking as well. Like, this guy's going to be pretty popular, and it's for good reason, Mike.
Yeah, no, very, very good reason. And it just, again, when you get down to this low, it's what it allows you to do with the rest of your lineup, right? So I'm going to play me some Vegas, but there's, I may try to make this point all night. Like you could talk me into Ryan Fox at 62.
Yeah.
I already like Gerard at 63. You could talk me into Bridgman at 64.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk me into Daniel Berger again. Like, there's so many guys that, you're not counting on your 6K guy to give you true win equity here, but I would look at ones that, we've seen the ability to go low for a single round, because in a tournament like this with only 49, there's still value in your guy shooting 64 one day with all of those birdies, potentially having a 3 in a row birdie streak or a bogey free round. Like those 2 to 3 points that we're talking about there, like that's the difference again in someone finishing 49th and 20th in this field in terms of finishing position.
Yeah. Josh showing us Ryan Gerard's putter. Man, this guy just cannot get it together, even for one tournament. I mean, this is, if we could go back to like there's other bad putters since, like really bad putters since Kyle Stanley. Like somebody needs to remind me, maybe in the chat, or Mike, you can, but like these are like vintage Kyle Stanley numbers. This guy's a great ball striker, just like Kyle Stanley was, and he cannot get the putter together. I will tell you, Mike, I like everything you just said about Johnny Vegas. I'd even be willing to play Michael Kim or Brian Campbell. Probably more inclined to play Michael Kim there, but I don't think I'll even go there, because what's so interesting is at the beginning of the show, you talked about, hey, technically you can play a Scottie Rory lineup and it leaves you 6,300. Well, there's guys down here that can survive 3 out of 4 rounds and just with the ball striking. Johnny Vegas is one of them. Thomas Dietrich, by the way, was hitting a ton of fairways last week somehow. So I think he's interesting. And I don't think people are going to play him because they're going to be playing Vegas and taking a chance on Ryan Fox or Gerard, or seeing Bud Cauley pop last week. Jacob Bridgman, there's no reason for me not to be on him. He could be hot with the putter, sometimes erratic off the tee, good with the long iron play. So Jacob Bridgman's a guy. I mean, Mike, this tells me that you can and maybe should consider making lineups that are superstars and scrubs with maybe 3, like maybe there should be some lineups that we make with 3 guys at 6,400 or below, and then 3 top heavy guys.
I certainly think so. I mean, the more, like, what is going to happen here is you're going to need to, win anything serious. You're going to need minimum of 3 of your golfers in the top 5, right? Minimum. And you got to have the winner. You're going to have whoever's in second. So it really comes down to, where you see the top of the leaderboard. But again, the more golfers you remove, the more variance you remove in terms of everything there at the top. I do think it'll be extremely top heavy. So that's why I'm playing almost all Scottie. Yeah, it's a very interesting format of DFS. That's not your typical week. Focus on both, those birdie streaks again, 3 in a row. Focus on players who can go low at any given round. There's, it's just like I'd much rather have birdie bogey than 2 par, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
Essentially apply that to your entire lineup.
And for the record, I wasn't suggesting that all your lineups should be like 3 top heavy guys and 3 guys that are actually 6,400 or below. But I do think you can potentially get away with that, and certainly going 2 or 3 top, 1 in the 7K range and 2 in the low 6K range is something I'm going to be very, very interested in. A couple of questions in the chat. One, but somebody from Twitter, by the way, if you're watching us on Twitter, thank you very much. I'm hoping if you're watching us on Twitter that you also happen to be subscribed to the SportsLine YouTube channel, where we put the early wedge, where we put the early edge. We put all our special NFL shows. We got one tomorrow at 3 o'clock, another one on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, previewing the AFC, NFC, college football shows. You name it, this SportsLine YouTube channel has it. So please make sure you're subscribed. But yeah, Bennett Grice also commenting on Twitter says, this is Rick Run Good. That's what Josh was putting up on the screen. It's rickrungood.com. Normally Rick is actually with us on Monday. Let's see if there's other questions in the chat. Will Scottie have his caddy for the BMW? Says Faustino. Asks Faustino. Mike, I don't think we know the answer to that question.
We do not know the answer to that. Will we before Thursday? Yeah, probably. Do I care? No. If this were a major, like if this were the Masters, maybe. If this were something with a massive field, got to make a cut, really difficult stuff, I would care. I don't think it matters much at all for Scottie, and for other players at the top, it would. I just think Scottie is, I don't think it matters at all.
Okay, there was another question about what Goddard's betting number was right now. So again, I mentioned how on the early edge this morning on the SportsLine YouTube channel at 10, I gave out Chris Goddard in the without Scottie Rory market at 30-1. Because Sepp Straka withdrew, and maybe because there was some action on Chris Goddard because people like the number. That number has now fallen. But let me go to His actual number is 35 to 1, just in the with market, in the normal market. But in that without market, I think it's fallen to 28 to 1. And I'm pretty sure it opened at longer than 35, Mike. And I'm looking only at one place right now, but that number's gone down just a little bit. But Mike, you commented you kind of like got her up to potentially, at least has the potential to win this thing.
Yes, definitely. I definitely think he's got that upside. It would be a without market for me. Anything north of 20 to 1, which again, I think you could find 22 to 26 or 22 to 25 in the without, it would be playable for me on Got Her Up.
Yeah, and I'll mention Cam Young, who we obviously also like in DFS. His betting number in that without market, again, that was just a market I talked about this morning without Rory and Scottie. I believe it went down to 22 to 1 from 25 to 1 after Sepp Straka withdrew. So sounds like, Mike, you're okay with, if you're taking Cam Young, you're okay with that number at 22 to 1 on Cam?
Yeah, 22, I would still be okay with Cam at that point.
All right. And Al is pointing out, hey, did we jump back on Got Her Up after his slump last week? I mean, don't forget he rebounded in a really awesome way on Sunday, and that round could have gone actually a lot better than it did. Scott Harris, what's the lowest salary you would go in DFS? Mike, is it 6,100? I mean, are you playing Brian Campbell or Michael Kim? But I guess the point we made, like all of those guys are in play.
All of those guys are in play. I wouldn't be super concerned with, playing minimum salary guys. I mean, talk about Campbell, you're talking about a guy that's won twice already this year.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to happen again? No, but yeah, I have no problem. I care way more about what the rest of my lineup looks like and way less about who the two golfers between 6 and 7K are in my lineup. That part matters very little to me this week.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. I think that'll do it, Mike. I mean, you kind of wrapped up. There's a lot of the game theory. You threaded it throughout the show and at the end of the show as well. Any parting words here as we get out of here for round 2 of the playoffs?
No, just stay tuned the rest of the week. Obviously, I'll have simulations and stuff like that up on SportsLine later tonight. But yeah, don't be afraid to get a little different. And again, if you're playing a guy that you're essentially punting a spot, doesn't necessarily matter who you're playing on that final spot, which I know is a very weird thing to say, but I firmly believe it.
Yeah, I completely agree. You're getting 4 rounds from whoever this punt is. And oh, by the way, he's in the top 49 in the FedEx Cup rankings. So that should tell you all you need to know about most of these players that are going to get 4 rounds. David Talk, we'll close with this. Is Rory worth it in DFS? Mike, we didn't talk a lot about Rory. It didn't sound like, I don't know. We got to see the ownership. I feel like that's more of like a Wednesday call, but he always gets some ownership and he's a lot cheaper than Scottie Scheffler. Do you think you're going to find yourself on Rory this week?
I might. I very well could. And I'll tell you what it'll look like for me is it could potentially be Scottie Got Her Up in 2 of my 3. And then the third one would be Rory and Ludwig Got Her Up. Probably how I will play it. I think that'll put me about even to the field on Rory. And I think it'll put me over the field on Scottie. And I'll feel good about not being underexposed to either is how I personally would play it.
That sounds like a great way to start a lineup. And this is a great way and place to end the show. We keep reminding you about that Wednesday live chat at 4 o'clock. But don't forget also, we got our Best Bets show tomorrow at 7 o'clock. It's me, Jason Sobel, Eric Cohen, and Patrick McDonald giving you our best bets for the BMW Championship. By the way, I'm going to be there, I think, on Friday. If you're going to be out there, please let me know. Contact me on Twitter or maybe in this chat and let me know. And obviously, we've got that Sunday morning show, which has really started to take off. So make sure you tune in to that Sunday 10:30 in the morning show as well. And one last thing. We're back on the network. We're back on the network on Friday at 1 o'clock. That'll be in the middle of round 2 on CBS Sports Network. That's always a very interesting show because you're getting a live look at how things are going and maybe some live bets and things of that nature. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a great show. Big thank you to Mike McClure. Big thank you to Josh, our producer behind the camera, but also sometimes in front of the camera. Thank you, everybody, for being in the chat. We'll see you next time on the Early Wedge.